Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to your post-match Raw on AI Pro, podcasting to you from my field here in beautiful rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and joining me to give their reactions to Newcastle 0, Liverpool 1 in the Premier League from that Newcastle place are Dave Hendrick and Jim Boardman. Let's start, Dave, by just acknowledging something here, which is that whatever about today's performance, we looked on in sort of awestruck wonder at what April might be when we were back in March. And we won at Watford, and we won at Benfica, and we drew with City, and we went through versus Benfica, and then we beat City, and then we beat United, and then we beat Everton, then we beat Villarreal, and then we beat Newcastle. That is outrageous.
Yeah, it is. It's an outrageous month. And you know, there's not one of the results you could really argue with. Like, nobody could look back and say, oh, well, they got lucky here or they got lucky there. We've just been the better team. And you look especially at the last three games. Like, we beat United 4-0 and it was rampant. But we were just as dominant, I thought, today in midweek against Villarreal and against Everton. And yet we've only scored 5 goals across the 3 games. But what's notable is just how comfortable we are. I thought today we just looked in complete control. Look, Newcastle have come into this game second most points in the league since January 1st, but it does need to be remembered. These aren't a good team. This is a team that didn't win any of their first 14 games, had one win before Christmas. They found form. They've uplifted themselves massively, but that's not a bad bunch of players that should have been where they were. It's not a great bunch of players that should be a top half team. They're somewhere in the middle. You know, they're just one of those teams like a Southampton or Crystal Palace or a Leeds or something like that who, you know, they shouldn't get relegated. They shouldn't really be top half. They're sort of in the rest of the mix. But they came in great form. They came in confident. I think they'd won 5 in a row at home. And we've gone there. We've won the game. And even, you know, talking to Jake Jackman, Newcastle fan, just there between the game and when we went live, and he said we were lucky that it was only 1-0. He said Liverpool could have won that 4-0 if their finishing had been more on point. And I think that's exactly correct. It's a very fair reflection of the game. I think if we'd put away our chances, we had 24 shots, 10 on target. Sadio missed 2 great chances, one in the first half, one in the second. Mo, I thought, took one ill-advised shot when he should have laid it back for Naby. Jota missed a good chance. Diaz missed a half-decent chance. We really should have scored 4, and I think that would have reflected the game that we watched more than the 1-0 did.
I think that's exactly right, and it would possibly have stopped the incessant wittering from every media source possible about Andre Mariner playing on in the lead up to the goal, because that was getting quite tedious by the end of it. And Jim,
why wouldn't he play on? Why wouldn't he play on? Milner won the ball. The referee had a great view of it. Milner won the ball. Schär kicks Milner's foot, and he only went down and stayed down because he knew he'd made a mistake. He knew he'd come out for a ball he wasn't going to get, and he stayed down hoping to get a friendly whistle. But Milner won the ball clean as day, and the ball is in the net within 15 seconds. Like, there's no reason to stop that game there.
Fletch says, as the second half is starting, the legend in his own lifetime, that is Fletch on BT Sport, he said, go download the BT app so you can look at the goal again and you can make up your own. But this is after incessant halftime wittering from the panel. you can make up your own mind about the incident where Dre plays on. And I'm thinking, my God, they really are stuck for any kind of a narrative here. Jim, it had the feel of one of those games where you were sort of hanging on to the edge of the couch a little bit watching it, because it only takes a one-off screamer from 35 yards or a half-decent ball into the box and a deflection or something like that for us to go 1-1. And then when you're running out of time towards the end of a game, there was genuinely nerves there. I think we all have to hold our hands up and say that we'd like that to have been more comfortable. But again, there's a lot of truth in what Dave's saying. I mean, we could have won that pulling away, to be perfectly honest. You think about some of the performances this team has put in over this season so far. I mean, we did actually win 5-0 against Manchester United pulling up. We basically gave them the second half. This team can do whatever it wants when there's a little bit of time, and Jurgen was particularly effusive in his praise there for the attitude as embodied by Andy Robbo. I think 93rd minute makes a fantastic tackle intervention and then drives up the pitch to try and launch a counter. He kind of in that moment sort of epitomized everything Jurgen wanted, and there's now it's over the line, Jim. We can breathe a little. It did feel unnecessarily tense because of those missed chances.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, you look how calm the squad are. Like if you watch that back now, now that you know what's happened, and you think, you might wonder to yourself, why was I so nervy? But I think that's something that we've got built into us, because we've seen it happen to us, even when we've been good, but definitely when we weren't so good, that we can throw games away. Because as you say, as someone once sang, it only takes a second. And Shelby taking a decent free kick when he got that opportunity could have been. We've seen him take decent free kicks. That could have been the one that made it 1-1. They'd have had the fans on the back. They could have even gone and made it 2-1 type of thing. But then you remember this Liverpool side don't look phased, and he was there again. I mean, half the time, maybe 3/4 of the time he was called into action, it was when the ref could have blown for off. The lineman could have flagged for offside, but they wait and wait, don't they? But that man at the back, Alisson, again, is the man who's always available when the other stuff runs out, and he's there then to make a difference. I just think, 5 changes as well, including Milner and playing in midfield could have been a worry, but the fact is you've got the reinforcements on the bench. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Everybody is nervous at 1-0, and it's so important. And I mean, if you're going to mention the BT commentator, if he said anything, I mean, I'm not sure if he's sponsored by the people who sponsor the view of the league table or something, because the amount of times he told us that a draw was enough to put us ahead of Man City, but that a draw probably wouldn't be enough in the general run of the season. I mean, he just kept saying the same thing over and over again. Unless I'm unlucky, because I'm getting better at zoning out from him now, at Mr. Fletch. he talks nonsense. It's what he does, doesn't he? I mean, he's getting worse. I think one thing that really winds me up about him is the stats that he throws in. All the way through the game, he'll throw in a stat, but it's not a useful stat that kind of has any sort of bearing on the game, that tells you anything about the current team or anything like that. It'd be one of these stats about, Liverpool have never lost a game when... Liverpool have never lost a game when they've been 1-0 ahead in the 28th minute of a game that's been played in the North East first on a Sunday, Saturday in April. And it's like, great, okay, that's wonderful. But, go and do quizzes, don't do commentary. That's what it gets like. But, I mean, bottom line is, it's April, last game of April. And now, with a bit of luck, we can go gathering some cups in May, because that is, not cups. And that is something really to sort of take a breath at.
Oh man, it's just to be set up like this going into this month is just absolutely phenomenal. And you've kind of queued us up nicely to take the next step. So I'll stay with you to have a look at the Liverpool lineup. You mentioned the 5 changes that were made. You mentioned the wincing that many of us did collectively when we saw that he had gone with Jordan and Jimbo in the middle, with Naby to add some much needed vigour in there as well, alongside the aging Jimbo. We've spoken very recently on this podcast and said, that we probably felt that Jimmy had never started a game for the Reds again, and how wrong we are, and how how little or how low we rate the comparative opinion that Kloppo obviously has for this guy, because I mean, it's a big call. So the team lines up with Joey Gomez coming in at right back. Joe Matip took his place back alongside Van Dijk, and Robbo starts at left back at the three in midfield that we've just spoken about, and he went with Jota, Mane and Diaz, choosing to rest Mo Salah. Now, you talk about 5 changes, Jim, but when you talk about 5 changes that include the Football Writers Player of the Year, our top scorer by a country mile, when you talk about 5 players including our most creative force, our right back, our sort of weapon of choice. And when you consider then as well that you are taking out Thiago, who has been in absolutely sensational form, you're removing quite a bit of creativity from that team and deciding to replace it with something else, which has its merits on its day, but its energy, its grit, it's that type of thing as opposed to the craftiness, that we can expect. Now, I have to say, just for context, I thought Joe Gomez stepped up to the plate really well in that regard. I thought his productivity in terms of getting forward and really, really passing the ball beautifully when forward, whether it's pulled backs, centres or crosses, that at least wasn't too much of a fall off from what we can expect from that position on a regular basis. But it was a ballsy call, Jim, to make all those moves.
Oh, it was, yeah. And I did worry a little bit to think myself, he's not, and I shouldn't have worried. Like, you do this a lot. You sort of second guess yourself, worrying, is he doing this because he's had a little bit of a run-in with BT Sport and he's trying to say to them, look, you saw us playing on Wednesday. You're now seeing us play here, and we've only got half the team because we were playing on Wednesday, and you've made us play this before we've even had a chance for a decent breakfast, And in fact, one of the co-commentators today even sort of maybe going to got in trouble with ET now, because she pointed out how disruptive this time of day is for a fixture, for a game of football for teams.
Yeah, I heard that.
I'm thinking, oh no, she's going to get a telling off. But the thing is that it's not what he's done. He's not done it for that reason. He's done it because the reason he's complained about this kick-off is because of what it does, and because of what it does is why he's made the changes. But we've got such a deep squad now that you can make those 5. I'll be honest. I mean, from the front 3, the way they all play, I honestly think you could pick any of the sort of 5 main men to play in that front 3. And you've kind of got to rotate people and give people rests and stuff, and you've got to keep people keen and make them think they can play a game. I'd hate to just play the front 3 every week, because then 2 players would be sort of getting disillusioned maybe and losing the sharpness. The other thing that Klopp said before the game as well was he could have made more than 5 changes, suggesting that there were more than 5 players who could have done with a bit of a rest. But he said that would have upset the rhythm too much. And it's true. He literally could have made probably 11 changes. And individually, we probably wouldn't have complained about any of the players who he did pick if he made 11 changes. That's how good the squad is. But to make 5, yeah, it is a big step. But defence, not bothered. Front line, not bothered. It was just that midfield. And I do think, Henderson and Milner, the pair of them together in the game, I think either of them can come in when we need them and do a certain amount of a job for us. And that's great that we've got them in the squad this season. I just think it's a bit much to ask for 2 of them to play a game like that against a Newcastle, who, as Dave rightly says, they're not a brilliant team, because the league position at the end of the year tells you that, but they have improved. And it's just having that little bit of an upper hand against them. But end of the day, we actually got the win, and now we've got a strong squad that can go out into Spain this week and actually just finish that other job off that we started.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely our hope in that regard. Dave, I'm sure you'll want to have your tuppence worth on the Liverpool lineup. Feel free to do that in a second, but I'll just tee you up to talk about Newcastle as well, because for those who didn't see it, they went with Dubravka. They had Kraft, Schär and Byrne at centre half, and Target the far side. Guimaraes, Shelvey, Saint-Maximin, Willock, Almiron and Joe Linton, who I had never really understood before what a crying, whinging sort of an individual Joe Linton is. On their bench, and I spoke to Jan very briefly about this, there's not a whole lot of depth there. They have Carl Darlow, they had Dummett, Lascelles, Ritchie, Manquillo, Wood, Murphy, Gale, and Longstaff. And when you hear those names, they're the kind of names that pop to mind for, as you said earlier on, solid sort of mid-table teams and people who will be selected regularly for those type of teams. Newcastle obviously have ambitions to be far more than that, and probably will try to blitz it over the summer. A lot of those lads are going to be looking over their shoulders, let's say, for sure. I was a little bit taken aback, I have to admit, that this lot who are supposedly in full flow, you said 5 at home, I think it is that, and 4 of their last Premier League wins in a row. Didn't have a whole lot about them, man. I mean, if you're looking at John Joe Shelvey to be your guile, I feel for you. Saint-Maximin wasn't exactly tremendous in that usual role that we see him either. So there's not a whole lot there either, considering how resurgent they are.
No, there's not at all. I mean, look, if they're going to become a top 4 team, which I think is their ambition, the only player in the matchday squad today who would be a starter for a top 4 team is Bruno Guimaraes. John Joe Shelvey, he's not a surprise to anybody. He just is what he is. He's a solid mid-table, lower mid-table Premier League midfielder. Dan Burn, Matty Target, Fabian Schär, they're all that same type of player, but in defence. Emil Kraft the same, Dubravka the same. It's just a lot of those type of players. You've got a front 3 today from them of Almiron, who's talented, but there's just something missing from his game. Maybe it's an aggression missing from his game, because he's got talent. Maybe it's a focus, I don't know, but it's never really worked for him at Newcastle. He has these spells for 2 and 3 games where he looks like he's putting it all together, and then he turns in a performance like today. Joelinton, to give him credit, 12 months ago, people were writing him off as one of the biggest flops in Premier League history, a £40 million striker who couldn't play up front. But the reason was, he isn't actually a striker. He's the guy Hoffenheim replaced Bobby with. And that's the type of player he is. He's like a little version of Bobby. So imagine you get Bobby in your Marks and Spencers or wherever, and then you want to get another one, but you don't have as much money in your pocket. So you go to Lidl and you try and find the next best thing. That's basically what Joelinton is. And to his credit, he has been really good under Eddie Howe. He's often played in midfield. And there have been games where he's played in midfield and he's looked unbelievably good. And look, Saint-Maximin, there's no doubting the talent. But whenever I see people say, oh, we should sign him, I just think, Jesus, lads, watch more than a YouTube compilation. He's just one of those players. He's always going to be entertaining. He's never going to be productive. He's the type of player that Wilf Zaha used to be like this, where he was in a bad team and he stood out because everything went through him. But when you actually looked at how much of the ball he received versus what he actually produced, it was a minimal amount. It's the same thing with Saint-Maximin. He'd rather beat 4 men by himself than beat 2 and play a pass. And he wouldn't be for me. Joe Willock I do like. I think as a squad midfielder, he'd have value. The only real surprise to me today was actually that Willock started. I thought they would have gone with Longstaff just to have a bit more solidity in there. Go with 3 midfielders that could do a bit and let Guimaraes play a bit more further forward, behind with Shelvey and Longstaff sort of in behind him, which is something they've been doing of late. But there was no real surprises in their team. Like you said, I mean, the bench, it's not going to scare you. When the attacking threats on the bench are Chris Wood, Jacob Murphy, and Dwight Gale, they haven't got anything to really turn to other than bring Wood on and hump long balls into the box. They're a hard-working team, but there's a lot of mediocre players there that if they want to go anywhere, they'll have to replace.
The only thing I can say in regards to today's match official, Andre Mariner, was that I'm pretty convinced that Dre organised that they would be wearing that colour so he could show off his tan. I think that's probably the only thing I can say about him. Some really strange calls over the course of the game, but the big one, the one that they want you to talk about, he did get right. So he emerges with tremendous credit. For me, does Big Dre.
He also got the call right when Milner was down on the floor with what looked like a head injury by actually stopping the play and letting him get some treatment, which, you know, is the right thing to do with head injuries. And I just hope Eddie Howe comes out later on to congratulate him for that, because, of course, Eddie Howe wasn't happy when a player of theirs got an apparent head injury and was so bad he was dazed for 5 minutes after it earlier on in the season, yet didn't actually get substituted and played the next game. So I'm sure Eddie Howe will be straight on afterwards to praise him for his important intervention there.
I will say we do actually now, having seen that, we do owe Richarlison a slight apology last week, because he went down from the same type of thing and we all laughed at him. And if James is going down, now Milner was up within, 30 seconds. Richarlison was on the floor for a good 4 or 5 minutes, but
yeah,
obviously hitting the top of the head or whatever, like it did to Richarlison and Milner, it can give you a bit of a jolt. Just a quick prick watch today, not too in depth, because Newcastle are a bit of an inoffensive team. They seem like a decent bunch of lads. John Joe Shelvey is probably a 6 on the Pickford Richarlison scale, which is the official scale for measuring pricks.
Yes.
And I would say Joelinton, largely because of the crying and the hold me back nonsense when he thought he was being a big lad picking on Jota, and the Naby Keita come over and stood in the middle and he wanted none of the real smoke. We'd give him about a 5 on prick watch on the Pickford Richarlison scale. So they're the only entries this week. And Bruno Guimaraes with about a 3 out of 10 on the Gordon meter, which of course is the official meter for registering dives. Guimaraes had one where he went down, felt a bit foolish, got himself back up, didn't complain too much. So about a 3 out of 10 for Bruno on the Gordon scale, the Gordon meter. And that's prick watch for this week.
You've been very generous there. You're obviously feeling the joy of the victory. I would lean a bit harder into the grades, but they are absolutely entirely yours to give.
Well, remember, we're grading against Pickford and Richarlison prick watch.
Yes.
So that's a very high bar to set.
It is.
And John Joe is probably normally about an 8, but he did play for the Reds. He had a couple of good moments for the Reds. So, there has to be a little bit of favour shown towards John Joe.
Indulgence, I like it. Yes, you're right. Let's get started with the events of the game, and we'll go right up to the big one, which is the big moment of the game, the goal. And Jim, you and I'll take a look at this. They had a little bit of an early flurry in terms of a little bit of possession and intent. Kraft had a run at us. Shelvey tried a sort of a half volley into the ground, went over the top on about 2 minutes. Joe Gomez did some excellent 1v1 defending on 3 minutes, and I thought that's a good sign. He does look very smooth and very sort of calm in his demeanour. It's great to see. I thought Schär should have got a yellow on 3 when Jota was breaking, but no such thing from Dre. 4 minutes in from the free kick that was just won there, the ball did break to Jota, who tried a really difficult kind of chest and volley situation, and it was well off target. 7 minutes in, we broke down the right hand side. Naby tried one from outside the box. It goes narrowly wide and should have been a corner. Clear deflection off the Newcastle defender. 9 minutes in, Virgil tries a volley from a corner and it's over the top, but he certainly connected with it. So it's nice to see the big man up there trying stuff like that. And then on 15, pretty dangerous Joe Gomez ball taken off Sadio Mane's toe by Kraft, but Sadio was offside anyway. And then we come to the goal. That's on 18 minutes. And there's lots to talk about here. The decision that we were talking about earlier on by the referee was that Milner put in a fantastic tackle against Schär, plays the ball, and then gets a bit of him. But as Dave said earlier on, it goes the other way too. The ball breaks to Henderson. Henderson plays in Naby on the left-hand side. He plays a great one too with Jota. It's a lovely little weighted pass return to him by Jota. He takes the ball, he kind of dribbles across the face of the goalkeeper before finishing very coolly with his left foot in a way that, we've seen Mo do this. We've seen Sadio do this. It takes a kind of certain amount of sang-froid to do that in front of the goal. And it was lovely to see Naby, who was really purring in this first half. Talk to me about that chunk of the game. If there's anything that you want to go back into or anything you want to pick up on, and then you're taking the goal itself.
Yeah, I think without dwelling on the ref, because they love the attention. We've given them far too much already. I think if you're going to look at his issues today, were all the sort of small things, like the two officials between them didn't see that went out for a corner in the move you mentioned, and they did that more than once. It was the sort of inequalities over who gets booked for what. There was just that kind of thing. It was that kind of game, and it's more sort of a thing for back at Ref HQ, you need to be pulling them in and having a word with them about this, rather than we need to get the game replayed level badness. It's not, obviously you wouldn't want the game replayed when you've won, but if it had gone the other way, it wouldn't have been enough to complain about. But this is the problem with refs. Thankfully, as we were talking about on Twitter the other day, a couple of them are retiring, and no doubt we'll bring some wonderful people in to replace them. And sooner or later, this ref watch thing will be a thing of the past that we laugh about with nostalgia. Yeah. Yes, of course. I think from a Liverpool point of view, we knew that they were going to be, well, I would have expected them to come out full of beans, basically. They've got the ground full, the place is sort of buzzing. It's like they've got the checkered flags, which doesn't mean it's game over. It means that they support Newcastle. It's all going, isn't it? It's all up. They're totally up for it, and you kind of got to expect a little bit of that as the game kicks off. But pretty soon, I think we just started to take control, and we were knocking on that door and knocking on that door and knocking on that door. As you just mentioned, those chances, and when the chance came that we took, it wasn't a foul. And I think if anyone watches replays of that, you're going to have to find an angle that doesn't exist, I think, to come up with it being anything other than, play on. I just genuinely don't know why anyone's complaining. The ref, to give him some credit, was in a really good place. He was kind of almost stood over it, looking straight down on it. He couldn't really have missed it. Even he couldn't have missed that. So that was not something that we should even be mentioning, but we know we will, because we know it'll keep getting brought up. From that point on, though, we carried on. We played on, and we played on, and we played on. And I just think what I love most about Naby was, and as you say, other players that we've got, like Mo will do this, at the point where you're thinking, right, this is the bit where you shoot, and this is the bit where the goalkeeper saves it because you shot and the goalkeeper was bound to get it. He doesn't. He does something else, and then he shoots. And it's that doing something else. And as you say, having the temperament, having the skill, having the calmness, having the self-belief, the confidence to actually just do that little bit that then gets you the chance to actually put it away is what's making this Liverpool team so special, because we've got that kind of confidence, that kind of thinking on your feet, that kind of quick thinking and everything, and the skill. We've got that throughout the squad. We've got that all the way through. Even with Alisson, who quite often commentators will say, oh, he's had a bit of a nervy moment. No, he didn't. He did something with the ball that was quite clever and made sure we kept possession. Oh, and by the way, if you noticed, all their defenders and all their attackers are all a little bit further up the pitch now, because we've got a bit excited because they thought they had a chance, and off we go, and we launch an attack. And so, throughout the pitch we've got that, and that's what Naby showed today, and that is something I'm loving. I'm loving seeing. And that goal, as it was the only one, but that was all we needed. You only need to score one more than the others, and we did that. And with our clean sheet record, it was always going to win us, wasn't it?
It was. And, again, narratives are a very funny thing, and you'll hear lots of reports from different areas if you open your ears, listeners, to the various sources, and they'll talk to you about plucky Newcastle, and they'll mention things like the thing we've already done to death, and they'll talk about how they carried a threat to the end and plucky Eddie Howe, etc. But there were 24 shots for the Reds with 10 on target, as opposed to 4 for them and 2 on target. We had 66% of the ball, and we had 83% pass completion. It's not quite the level of dominance that we've had in the previous 2 games, but then we made 5 changes. So this is the true story of the game, and anything other than a Reds win would have been absolute daylight robbery. We just have to acknowledge that as well, because we'll always do it if it's the other way around. And Dave, just to get back into the rest of this half, because I kind of feel like doing that because there's a lot of stuff and yet there's not a lot of stuff. In many ways, the rest of the half, the two lads who would have had your eyebrows gone off your forehead, no doubt, were quite central in a lot of stuff. Let me just go through these incidents and you can pick out whatever it is you want to talk about. So after the goal, nothing really much happens for a while. 25 minutes, there is an opportunity where Diaz gets on the end of a Naby pass. He gets a body check, he stays on his feet, he cuts it back, but there's nobody there. 27 minutes in, St. Maximin runs at us centrally. I think he did that twice in the game, dragged the low shot wide. Now, Jimmy Milner steps up and does Jimmy Milner things on 28 minutes, takes out Guimaraes. It should be a yellow, if we're being perfectly honest. And the camera pans to him, and poor El Milner is absolutely puce in the face at this stage. He is blowing hard. Naby and Sadio do some lovely bits in the middle, great technique, lovely poise between the two of them. It's great that two lads who are clearly pals can link up in that way on the pitch as well. It's just added bonus. 33 minutes in, there's a great break by Diaz. He plays Sadio in, and Sadio's shot is poor and straight at the keeper. It's a good opportunity. Henderson, now it's his turn to step up in 37 minutes. He takes a free kick, but it goes well wide of the top corner. They actually have the ball in the net on 38 minutes, but of course it's the usual bullshit where there was not one but two of them offside, but they let it play on. Ali does his level best to stop it and does his bit. Robbo then tries to do his bit just to tell him to fuck off, and we do it actually later on as well. So obviously that's ruled out. 40 minutes, there's a fantastic header from distance by Jota. Beautiful. I mean, textbook. One of those ones where you see the freeze frame of it with the neck muscles and the perfect turn and the perfect poise. It was a Henderson trademark ball in, and fantastic header by Jota. But it wasn't to be. 41 minutes, Milner has an opportunity. He's on the edge of the box. It breaks to him. He chests it. He volleys it. It's well hit, but it's wide of the left post. A couple of yellows for Joelinton and Jota. And then at the end, the Milner story is complete because he has the ball in time and space on the left-hand side of the box. He's approaching in from that kind of Sadio Mane area. There's reds all around him, and he dinks a ball right into the one area where there was literally nobody. So the half then ended with Almiron getting whatever you said it was, a 3 on the Gordonometer for a simulated dive. That's my take on the incidents of the half. But you'll have one or two of them, no doubt, you want to pick out specifically.
Yeah, I just think after we scored the goal, we started to really open them up a couple of times, and we started to look a lot more confident. The goal itself is obviously brilliant. You guys have covered it. Naby's he's so good when he has the ball in tight spaces like that. But, you know, the chances that we started to get from there on, it was, you know, those games, and we've had them for years, where we get a bunch of chances, we don't take them, and then all of a sudden you start to think, oh God, this is going to be one of those days. Like, they're going to bring on Chris Wood on 75 and score.
Exactly that.
Because that's just what's going to happen. Like, when Milner has that half volley where he would chest it down, the Mane chance, the Jota header, which, by the way, Martin Dubravka, I mean, I get that there's men there taking pictures, but you don't need to make every save look like it's the biggest save you've ever made in your life. That's a simple up and tap it over the bar type of save. There's no need for the big flamboyant dive. Alisson catches that. No, we were controlling the game. Like you said, they were continually offside. What did you say? They had 60-something%? They had 34% of the ball?
Yeah.
And yet they were caught offside 9 times today. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. They barely had 9 attacks in the whole game. But it just goes to show how good that line is. When Virgil is there marshalling that defence, it's just different class. I thought Matip was getting under the skin of Almiron, of St. Maximin as well. There was that one incident where it might have been in the second half, the ball slid over the top, but it started in the first half where every time St. Maximin got the ball, Matip was right up on him, and he was kind of putting a hand to one side, not necessarily on him. And Maximin was getting very uncomfortable with the whole thing. He's not the type of player that plays well with his back to goal, and I thought Matip did really well with sort of running him off the ball. Gomez in that first half, I thought when we think of Trent, we think of everything he brings to the team. When we think of Joe Gomez, we largely think of him as a central defender who does a job for us at right back, but you forget that Joe has an outstanding level of technical ability, and his first touch is outstanding. I'd love to know if Joe was a midfielder when he was younger, because he just seems to have a really high technical level. Yeah. He's comfortable in tight spaces. It needs to be said, he's far too good to not be starting, not necessarily for us, but he should be starting games week in, week out somewhere. I don't know that other than us and City, there's a team in England that he doesn't start for. And if you go around Europe, I'm not sure there's a team he doesn't start for. I think he starts for Real. I think he starts for Bayern. I think he starts for Barca and all the rest of them, other than us and City. And even at that, I think I might take him over what we're seeing from Aymeric Laporte right now. He's an outstanding centre-back. He'd be the best third centre-back in the world, let alone the best fourth centre-back in the world. And today, I thought him and Naby, especially on that right side, were absolutely outstanding, because most of their threat came down that side, and they just snuffed it out time and time and time again. And we're just very, very fortunate to have a player like him. And you'd hope that we can keep hold of him, but in the summer it may be that he wants to go somewhere else and play more regularly. But I thought today he gave a good reminder of what he's capable of. And in that first half, a lot of our best football was coming through Joe Gomez, which was nice to see.
Exactly. I felt exactly the same way as I watched him. I just thought he was really sort of purring and so smooth in his actions and his moves. Technique is fantastic. I loved his contributions going forward, and that was the bonus. Apparently there are lads who think he can't cross a ball, which I've never really understood, but the pullbacks and passes into feet when he was in advanced positions were outstanding. That was great to watch from Joe today. And Jim, if we start the second half together, you and I, it is Joe Gomez who does brilliantly with a run and a cross, and Diaz, of all people, miscontrols it. And actually it happened a few times in this game, and it's so atypical because he almost never does anything wrong technically. It was a good opportunity. His miscontrol sort of ruined the chance that Joe had created. They had a little bit of a flurry. I think there was a bit of a cross, maybe St. Maxima run. But Naby Keita, with a bit of composure, puts paid to that and kind of takes the sting out. I think he draws a foul as well. 49 minutes, there is a break by us, which ends with a Diaz shot deflected. There's a yellow card for Joe Gomez, dragging back Willock on 50. The next little thing of note then was the Milner incident, where he takes the free kick on the head, and I think it's probably, Jim, because he's stooping down. It's probably as much a sort of a rattler as anything else. It catches him, as Dave said earlier, on the crown of the head. But, you know, what got me about it was, by the time Andre Marner whistled, we were playing it out from the back, but the dopes in the Newcastle crowd chose to ignore that and just be annoyed that the game was stopped for reasons, even though we were in possession of the ball and ready to play away. Sadio was fouled as they launched a bit of an attack. Robbo sort of sees Guimaraes out to put pay to that. And then on 58 minutes, Milner with a ball over the top into Jota. It's a nice pass. The keeper's coming out. Then as the ball breaks, Robbo advances, hits the ball straight at him with the keeper stranded. It was another rare bad choice by Robbo today. And we'll finish, me and you, about halfway through this half on 62 minutes and 63 minutes, where there's a couple of little episodes. It was a great one too with Sadio and Joe Gomez. Absolutely fantastic. The fullback did brilliantly with the cutback. Sadio fired narrowly wide of the base of the post. He should score again. That's the second time. And then on 63 minutes, another Sadio effort was blocked. And as Diaz is leaning back into the defender, he tries to loop it over his head and beat the keeper that way. But Dubravka was able to catch it. And they bring on 66 Wood for Willock. And we're set up for that kind of nervy ending then with the target man on the pitch. Talk to me about the first half of the first half, Jim, if there's anything that you wanted to note particularly or any player you want to sort of highlight specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think by this point now, the point we're talking to, we still had the same 11 on the pitch that had started, and I think it's one of those games where if you're at the ground, you're anxiously looking over at the bench to see if there's any activity because you think, I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe everyone's thinking differently in every game. We all think differently, but I'm starting to think now, look, come on, it's time to bring the other lads on now. Time to strengthen this a bit now. I've got, certainly on the 60th, I was really expecting to see something to change in midfield, for example, and it just felt like, the longer we went without the change, the more worried I got. Now, I'll be honest with you, if I watch the game back later, I'd probably think, why were you that worried? As we all do, but it's just that sort of sense that they're sort of finding little bits here and there, and although we're getting those chances, it's still that fear that as we're admiring our times of coming close, they just sneak past and get one in, by some bit of fluke or bit of good play, whatever it takes. And I just felt like in this period of time now, we just need to kind of just change things a little, send a message to them, if anything, that any kind of confidence they're starting to build. And you can imagine it, and there's confidence in the home crowd, the way that they're crying over decisions and stuff like that. The way to sort of deal with that in many ways is to just say, well, here comes Mo Salah, here comes Thiago, here comes Fabinho, one of those three straight away at that point would have, I think, just changed things a little. But what do I know? Obviously, I'm not the man who's just signed a new contract because of how good I am as a coach. And I think that's why Klopp and his team know what to do and when to do it. I don't know. It's just one of those things that I think in a game like this, one goal isn't enough. It never is. In fact, Milner actually said that after the game. He said, one goal is never enough, apart from when you win 1-0. He almost said today. He kind of tripped himself up a little bit. But it isn't. And I just think you could see, Milner, I think, was starting to tire by this point. And when you're tired, you start to make mistakes. So even if Millie was our best ever midfielder, the age he's at now and the lack of games he's had recently, I think, you're asking a lot for him to play as much as he did, but it doesn't matter. I think the key thing is that by this point we had held on, and it sort of took my attention, went to the fact that I actually think Newcastle, even when we were ahead, were very, very focused on defence. I think they were just hoping for counter-attacks. They weren't really trying to rip us apart. And so my worries about us conceding were more about when one of our attacks breaks down, will they get a break that works out for them? And as I said at the start of the show, I shouldn't have been worried because we never looked like we were panicked. We never looked worried. The fans might have been sat at home or sat up in that high stand, but the team were never worried. And that's what got us through to this point we're talking about now.
It's funny you mention that, just to sort of lean into a point you're making about not worrying and something Dave raised earlier on. I found myself staring in admiration several times during the course of the game, just watching Virgil doing that sort of flappy forearm thing that he does, where he's just basically telling lads exactly where to go and where to be, and it really is a marshalling of that back line, and it's such a weapon. It's the natural leadership he's got. I mean, Milner's a leader, and that's why he wears the armband sometimes. You can see why. Henderson's always had the armband. I don't know how long he's had it now, but I think it's been a while, hasn't it? I think since Stevie left. So
2015.
Yeah, but then when the armband changed places for the third time today, it went to the man who I think you would assume was the captain if nobody wore armbands. To Virgil, as you say.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just lovely to watch. It's like everywhere, all over the pitch, there are these things you can see. Like I said earlier on, there was a little moment between Naby and Sadio, just outrageous bit of technique in the middle of the park when they're surrounded by bodies, and just the way we play out from defence. There's so many little areas that you can get joy from watching this crew at the moment. Jim talked there, Dave, about Milner starting to flag a bit in terms of energy. That's mid 60s in minutes. He stays on until 77 because there are changes made before that. There was actually a really decent move, a Milner diagonal ball to Naby Keita. His sort of lovely touch pass sets Joe Gomez in, and he drives the ball across. That leads to a corner. From that, Virgil actually has a header. Sadio just can't get there before the keeper. He picks up a yellow because he leaves a bit on him by accident afterwards on his thigh. We then bring on 69 minutes Mo and Fabinho for Sadio and Hendo. That then leads almost immediately. There's a sort of a move forward by us. Great move actually. Diaz cuts in, shot with power. The ball almost deflects into Mo's path, but the keeper gets there ahead of him. And then another minute, Mo's involved. He heads over from a Robertson pass in 70 minutes. Now, to be fair, it's one of those crosses that's behind him. He's no real chance. He just gets his head to it. There was a chance then again straight away afterwards. A great break down the left by Diaz. His cross was killed effortlessly by Mo Salah's touch, and then he tries the patented Mo curler, but it's just not exactly executed properly, and Dubravka is able to hold on to it. 72 minutes, Jota got in. He hits the keeper with a half volley, very powerful, but he went with power as opposed to trying to dribble it in or finesse the finish. And then the angle was narrow, so I think that was always going to happen. Now, there was a fantastic save by Alisson and a one-on-one with Wood, even though it was offside. And again, we've said it so many times in the show, these things are important. Alisson's not having it, and I love that. And then the change comes. We bring on Thiago from Milner. Now, there's not a whole lot left in the rest of the game, for being perfectly honest. There's a Jota drive at them that leads to a corner. There's a great move on 84 where Diaz gets in, does craft, but he finds the side netting. I think there might be deflection there, but it's not seen by the ref. They bring on Murphy for craft. Guimarães has a shot in 86 minutes, which I don't know about you, Dave, but it had me nervous. It was a good dig, very well saved by Ali, who got across and got his full body behind it down low. Big clearance by Joe Gomez on 88 minutes when they were trying to pump a ball or two into the box. And on 89, Mo was in on goal via a lovely Diaz crossfield ball, but it just kind of got away from him in the end. There were 4 minutes added, and then the only thing of note really in that was that there was a fantastic Robbo challenge. Now, I say fantastic. He goes to ground, he slides in, he gets the ball. It would have been a penalty if he doesn't execute it properly. But then he's up, like he often is. So many times he kind of kicked the ball around a lad and ran around him today. That's the kind of form and moment that Andy Robbo's in at the moment. He drove on and got cleaned out of it, and we end up with a free kick right in the last minute, and for some reason Fabinho tries to go at it, and he's trying to Ronaldo the dipper, but it's over the top, and it doesn't end up successfully. Like I say, I'm cramming all these incidents in because it feels like that's the thing to do in this one, because they're not like big stories, but even just listening to myself there, I'm describing a team that's incredibly dominant. And to go full circle back to what you said at the start of the show, like, I mean, really and truly, there should be more goals on the table to show for it. And I wouldn't necessarily be too critical of our lot. I think it was just one of those days.
Yeah, I mean, it is just one of those days. Like, you know, Sadio missed a decent chance in the first half after good work by Diaz. He missed a really good chance in the second half. I thought the Salah one that he sort of tried to curl, he really should have just laid back for Naby to hit.
Yeah.
The Jota one that you mentioned, if he just looks, all he needs to do is roll the ball to his left and Diaz has a tap in. You know, there was a little bit of a selfish streak came in, and that's understandable. These are guys that are paid money to score goals, so you know you can understand them backing themselves, especially with the seasons that they're having. Newcastle were just so strange in that last period, though, because you bring on Chris Wood, he can't do anything else other than win the ball in the air, and yet you seem scared to pump the crosses in. Now, admittedly, we do have Virgil and we do have Joel Matip, but there was one moment where they had the ball on our right, their left, opportunity to cross, didn't take it, played it centrally. moved it out to the right. Shelvey had an opportunity to cross, didn't take it, cut back, and then just sort of floated the ball in with his left foot. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, do you not have any real ambition to try and get something out of this game? But I think they were just overrun and overpowered by a better team on the day. I thought Robbo from left back was outstanding today. Absolutely, must have had a Weetabix soaked in iron brew or something this morning, because he just never stopped. He never ever stopped running. There was one incident you didn't mention. Robbo got the ball in their penalty area, and I thought he got pulled back, and he went to ground. Now, he got up straight away, but he seemed to get pulled back a little bit.
I thought that as well, but literally nobody made anything of it, including him.
Including him, to be fair, he did get up, but there was no replay of it.
No.
Instead, they showed a replay of an offside, which was just strange. But, yeah, I mean, look, we were in control. We were dominant from early doors right the way through. And when the likes of Fabinho and Thiago start to come on, the level of control just goes up even further, and we just shut them down. I will correct you on one thing. Fabinho didn't try to do a Ronaldo. He did a Ronaldo by sailing that free kick over the bar. But, you know, it was a better effort than Henderson's free kick in the first half, which he spent an awful long time preening over, and then nearly knocked someone unconscious in the stand about 10 yards from the goalpost. But
whose free kick was it that Trent looked like he was laughing at?
Henderson's.
Was it?
That was Henderson's in the first half. Because Henderson, like, he stands over for every free kick. It's him, it's Robbo, it's Mo, and it's Trent. And he stands there. And every so often they let him do the little fake run over it. But, like, you know he's not hitting it. But here he was. It was his opportunity. Stand back, Andy Robertson. I have this. Even though it's better suited to a left footer, I'm going to take this. And he just makes a haze of it. And it reminded me, when the camera panned to the bench and Trent was laughing, it reminded me of years back. Klopp was only at the club a short period of time. I think we were playing Everton at home in like a midweek game, and we were hammering them. And there was a lovely bit of play, a bit of keepy-uppy down the left flank. The ball came across into the middle of the field, and Lucas picked it up about 25 yards from goal. And the whole stadium shouted to shoot, and he dribbled the ball at the keeper. And Klopp, the camera turned to Klopp, and he was cracking himself in half.
Oh, it's so good. That's so funny.
What it reminded. But look, when he's taking a free kick that bad, and the reaction is laughter, you know that these lads are just really confident and really comfortable, and they know they're going to be good enough to go and win this game, regardless. It's a missed opportunity, but it's not something that's going to cost us. That's 40 points from the last 42 available in the Premier League for Liverpool. And you went through the results for April, Trev. We have been absolutely phenomenal in recent months. I mean, the only game we've lost was a game we could afford to lose in the Inter Milan second leg, where we had the comfortable win from the first leg. But, you know, we drew with Chelsea on January 2nd. And since then, we have won every league game that we've played, and that is 13 wins and a draw since that Chelsea game. And that Chelsea game, if you remember, we were obviously 2-0 up. They come back, tied at 2-2, and a lot of people came away after that game thinking that's the league gone. City were, I think, 12 points clear. We did have a couple of games in hand, but you were like, we're never going to catch them, not the way we're playing, because we'd drawn with Tottenham. We'd lost to a really, really bad Leicester team, and then we drew with Chelsea, and we thought, that's it, title over. So to have been able to drag ourselves back into the mix the way we have, frankly, we're now in a position where we need City to drop something. And if they don't, then, you know, fair play to them. If they can go the rest of the season without dropping a point, then they deserve the title. But for us to even be in this position where we're talking about the possibility of a quadruple as we head into May, when nothing of the sort looked possible in January, at the start of January, and you're thinking to yourself, well, look, if we win the League Cup and we win the Champions League and we can have a good old go at the FA Cup, that's still a great season. Like, that would be a great season. But here we are heading into May. with the possibility of winning everything.
Yeah.
A real possibility. We're currently top of the league. City have to respond. They've got leads later on, but they have to win. If they don't win, they're handing the title to us, and it will then be in our grasp.
So the only 2 points that we dropped out of 42 available were the 2 against City.
2 away to City, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And if you look before, I think if you look before that as well, the bad spell we had, and I say bad as in we had a couple of draws and a defeat, I think was in December. And so if anything has beaten us in the league this season in a way, it's COVID, because we had, we had all the issues with players missing and players not, players not well, and the upheaval that causes to you, basically. It's not normal business, is it? It's not normal injuries, and it interferes with training and everything, and that's something to think of. That I'm not blaming that, but that's how good we've been.
That's the thing. You look at our season. We've drawn twice with Chelsea. That's not a bad result. Drawing with Chelsea, who this was before they sort of had this recent fall off. They were still in the mix at the time. They're not bad results. Drawing twice with City, not bad results. Drawing away to Spurs, not a bad result. Like, they are a good team. They've got Kane, they've got Son, they've got a great manager. The disappointing results. Yeah, that's the thing. That's exactly the thing with 10 men. Now, the referee on that day was a disgrace. But when you look at, losing away to Leicester, that's a really bad result. We had a close to full strength team. They had nobody, and it was a mess. But the ones that kind of disappoint are, Brentford away is a game we should have won, and the Brighton at home game, where we're 2-0 up and then managed to throw it away. Those are disappointing. Losing away to West Ham is disappointing. I don't know it's a bad result because they're a pretty good team. But
Dave,
Brentford, Brighton, and Leicester. But this is the thing, Trev. My last point on this. We're in a league right now because of us and City, not just them. The two of us have raised the standard in this league. Yeah. Well, you can't afford 1 defeat and 2 draws that are outside of the elite in the league. You drop those points and it can be curtains for you.
That's exactly it. That's where I was going to drive the bus as well, because it is. There was a time when you could win a league throwing points away left, right and centre.
They used to say you can afford to lose 6 games. It used to be literally 6 games you could lose in a season. Early days of the Premier League at least.
Yeah, it was. And it's just a completely different paradigm. A paradigm, as Dave says, ushered in by the brilliance of 2 particular teams, and we're one of them. And that's...
Well, put it this way. We've already won, I think 6 games more this season than Manchester United won the year they won the treble. We've won 6 games more across all competitions than they had the year they won the treble. And that in itself it shows how drastically different the Premier League is now. As Jim said, you could afford to lose 6. You could also afford to draw 10 games. I mean, Arsenal went unbeaten in the league in 03-04. And they drew 10 league games, or was it 9 league games? 12 league games, 12 league games. You wouldn't really get away with that now. You really wouldn't get away with that now. United, the year they won the treble, had 79 points at the end of the season, 13 draws, 3 defeats.
We've got 82 now.
We've 82 and we've got 4 games left. City have 80 with 5 games left. That's the standard now. So when the likes of, Roy Keane or whoever comes out and says, Liverpool might only win 1 league title, this isn't the same game you played, pal. This is a very different league. You didn't have a City. You didn't have anything like them. Yet Chelsea came along at a certain point, but you still could match their spending. You could overspend above Arsenal and all the rest. We can't spend a fraction of what City do, what Chelsea do, what United do. And yet we still set the standard in this league along with City. So that just shows what a job Klopp is doing and has done.
Yeah, and it's the same story in Europe. I mean, the 2 teams are patently head and shoulders when they're playing their stuff. Head and shoulders above everybody else in Europe, which is a remarkable stage to be at as well. Jim, let's you and I then finish up getting your last thoughts and any plugs that you have as well. I mean, looking back over it, is there anything you want to recap on or any sort of takeaway thoughts that you have to finish up with?
I think just so much to say, isn't there? Because it's a 1-0 and you can end up thinking, well, there's not a lot to say about a 1-0. But sometimes it's these games that give you lots to think about. I think there's that defence again. We are so solid at the back, and although Ellison didn't have a lot to do, especially when the flag wasn't belatedly involved, when he was needed, he did what he does, and that, you know, he's paid for himself so many times over now. We kind of owe him. He's that good, and this is again, this is sort of part of what I'm going to come to in a minute is how good Liverpool are. It's not just about the manager and the players; it's how good the club has become. I mean, stats-wise, I thought one interesting one today that you may have mentioned was, I think they had 276 passes. We had 518, which is almost double, you know. And the possession was 6-3, you know, 66-33. It's just this sort of this immense brilliance that we're seeing now. There's not enough words to use for it, because I think words that we would use to describe Liverpool now, we've used in the past, and we wasted them using them then because we didn't realise how good we could be. And I think an important point of all this is that this comes a couple of days after Klopp's announced his new contract. And there's been times in the past, and you get it with all clubs, new contracts, almost everyone takes the foot off the brake a bit, because it's like, oh, I've got the new deal now. And, you know, almost subconsciously takes the foot off the accelerator and just loses. We didn't, we won. And the reason that he's staying in part is because of how well run the club is, how well loved he is by the fans, how everything is just right for him. The recruitment works, the people around him are right, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch. We are just getting the right people into just about every role. And it's not about money all the time as well. It's about attitude and personality, and we're finding the right players. And that leads me nicely onto a little plug. As I said to Gags, we did a sort of reaction to Klopp's new contract show, which you can hear on Anfield Index. It's worth a listen. We did it while it was all still fresh and we were all still excited, which we still are. But we were very excited then.
It's great fun,
you know. And one of the things I said then is that, you know, it's about not bringing in the best player in the world. Some players just won't work here. They might be the best player in the world, but they wouldn't last 5 minutes. You know, they wouldn't be able to take Trent laughing at the free kicks, for example. They wouldn't, or they'd be laughing at the wrong time. You know, they'd be too arrogant, too bossy. They'd want money more than they want success. They'd want all the wrong things. They just would not fit. And that's what I love about this squad now. They all fit. They all work. There's no sort of Mario Balotellis who nobody gets on with. There's none of that kind of, you know, that kind of click forming or anything like that. They're all mates. They all get on with each other, even though they've all got different interests. I'm sure James Milner and Naby Keita don't kind of, you know, all sort of listen to music together, you know, but it's just, even though there's the age gap and stuff like that, the young players are fitting in. They're being coached well, and taught well by the older players. And it's just, what's important and what's good with Klopp staying is that it's about sustaining that and keeping it going. Whatever happens this season, it's been a hell of a season. If it does end with one trophy, it's still been a hell of a season. And that's something to remember, because we need to build on that next season. Whether we win everything or not, we cannot relax. We cannot say that wasn't good enough. We've got to say, yeah, it was good enough, but it counts for nothing next season. And I just think we've got everything in place to do that. Everything in place to just make the right signings we need to this summer. Let the right players go. Let the right players move on, and hopefully spend the right money. Not get ripped off. Not spend short when you could have done with spending. And hopefully when next season kicks off with 4 trophies in the bag, hopefully when next season kicks off, we'll be carrying it on, and this train will keep running.
Yeah, I'm punching the air and ripping my shirt off here, Jim. This is great stuff. You've got me convinced. And you know what, as well, I have to say, this is going to play on my mind in a great entertaining way for the rest of the evening. I'm kind of wondering what Jimmy Milner listens to. Half of me thinks he's a Lynyrd Skynyrd man, and then half of me thinks maybe he's more of a James Taylor man. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'd say it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both, depending on the circumstance. I'd imagine there's a bit of Neil Diamond in the rotation. I'd say he breaks out some Bruce Springsteen bangers to get himself up for game. Skinner probably when he's in the car. Bit of Leonard Skinner when he's in the car, just, you know, wants to get in his own little space and not have anybody else. But he likes a bit of Allman Brothers as well. I'd say that's the type of stuff, Jimmy.
What would his walk-on music be if he was coming on stage to do what, you know, when he's retired? He's coming on stage. What will his walk-on music will be?
James Milner's walk-on music be?
Let's leave that one. I'll get a take from everyone before we finish the show. And Dave, in the words of Jurgen Klopp, this is going to. I can just imagine now the eyes rolling in the back of your head. This is going to be quite, as Jurgen would call it, a brain fuck for you. If you haven't seen the brain fuck video, for the love of God, get yourself on Twitter and look that up, because it's hilarious. He said today on Jimmy Milner, nothing that we have achieved in the last few years would have happened without James Milner. He set standards that educated all of us. That's nice. I do like that, I have to say. Let's get your wrap-up thoughts, Dave, and let the folks know what's going on in Hendrick land as well.
Yeah, no, look, it is nice of Klopp to say, and Milner has played an important role off the pitch in terms of being a role model and whatever else. But he was good today. Let's not pretend that he's been at this level all season. Today was probably the best performance Milner's turned in all year, and it was exactly what was needed at exactly the right time. And that's what's important, is that he turned up. He was asked to do a job. He did a job. He gave us a 7 out of 10 performance when what we needed was a 7 out of 10 performance. Him and Brian both had good games today. There's just, that's just what it was. They were both good today. That BT gave Milner the man of the match is farcical, considering Naby Keita and Joe Gomez and Andy Robertson and Diaz were all better, but it is what it is. Last thoughts today, Jim Beglin. You guys could be able to tell me, was there not a time when Jim Beglin was a decent co-commentator? Did he not used to be quite good?
I think he was.
God, he's fucking obnoxiously bad now. Jesus.
I've not heard him great, but he was always good, and he was always good when I listened to him.
He tried to make out that the big reason Jota and Joelinton had their argy-bargy was because they spoke the same language. That's just what he said.
Wow, that's
it made no sense at all. But he's Jim Beglin. He overhyped Eddie Howe to a great degree, which was nice. I did like when Milner was down, the camera went to Howe and Klopp on the sideline, and they seemed to be having a bit of a laugh about something. And Howe said something. Klopp tapped the top of his head and then just walked away. He just left Howe standing there like, oh, so the conversation's over then. Which was good. But look, all of our lads put in good performances today. There was I thought Sadio was the only one you could say had a bit of an off game, but he was out playing on the left again, whereas he's been doing so well through the middle. That was sort of understandable.
Shouldn't have been booked.
No, I didn't think so either. Like, I get that he makes contact with the man, but that's clearly just a momentum thing. He doesn't catch him with any sort of force or anything. He's going for the ball. Dubravka gets to the ball first, and it's just what happens when two players go for the same thing. There's nowhere for Mane to put his body other than for it to make contact with Dubravka. That was a bit of a strange one, but look, today was one of our more difficult remaining games because Toon were in such good form. We get Villarreal now midweek. We've got that cushion of a 2-0 lead. Then it's Spurs at home next Saturday night, which is a bizarre time for a game to be played. But that one should be good. I'm looking forward to that game. I think that's a big match. And then our run gets a bit more straightforward. Villa on the beach, Southampton on the beach, and Wolves on the beach. If we can get through that Spurs game next week, I think City have to win all their games or we're going to take the title, because if we beat Spurs, I don't see us dropping anything in those last three games, even with the FA Cup final as a distraction in between and the Champions League final to come at the end, assuming we get through Villarreal. Like, get yourselves buckled up, because the Reds have probably 7 games left this season. And winning all 7 could mean 3 more trophies. And it's crazy to think that we've played this season, we've played 50 odd games so far, and we're now in a position where 7 games will decide 3 trophies. The 50 odd has only decided 1. That's what it boils down to, is this last 7 games for us. Get through Villarreal, win our league matches, win the FA Cup final, win the Champions League final. We'll have at least 2 trophies doing that, and maybe a third if City find a way to slip up. It's mad to think that we're in this position. It's only possible because of one lad, and that's that big German lunatic who no one else could do this. No one else could do what he does. I love Diego Simeone. I don't think he can do what Klopp does because I don't think he has the bombastic nature to him to really connect with the fans, because I don't think Liverpool fans will put up with his football. I think he'd connect with them on a human level, but not on a footballing level. Conte needs the money. Pep couldn't do what Klopp has done. He's one of one. And for him to be signed on, this is the perfect way to end a week where he signs a new contract, where Salah wins Footballer of the Year, and now we get 3 points, and we've got a nice little few days rest until Villarreal. It's going to be madness for the rest of this season. Absolute madness. As for me, 2-footed pod every day, Daily Red every day. There won't be on Monday because it's a bank holiday, so, talk to the walls. But yeah, look, what an absolutely belting time. What an absolutely belting time for everything to do with Liverpool Football Club. And there could just be the added little bonus of the Ev going down. And wouldn't that be just a nice little cherry on top of the cake?
You know what? I think there's a chance, because I'm really starting to feel bad about it now. Not to most of the Everton fans that you get on Twitter, but to the I know people who support Everton, and I would say I feel sorry, but I'm worried for them, because I don't think they'll come back up. That's another podcast.
That's another podcast. And Jim, in answer to your previous query, I've been thinking about this in and out between chatting to both of you. I'm reckoning Jimmy Milner comes on to whatever event he's coming on. I think he's got a lot of self-awareness, this Jimmy Milner. He's a great sense of humor. He doesn't take himself too seriously. And I think, given that as he runs, he tends to get smaller and lower to the ground the further he goes. And given that most of the things that he does on a pitch involve him firing himself bodily at other people, I'm thinking free falling. That's what I think. I think that's the one. Did you come up with a shout yourself?
I think he'd just surprise everyone, because I think he'd go back to his Leeds roots, and then he'd surprise everyone. You'd be expecting a night of cultured, laid back chat, and he'd come on to the Kaiser Chiefs, and I predict a riot. And I think that would just set the tone for the night, because it wouldn't be as cultured and laid back as you think.
I think you could be right there, actually. You're probably closer. Dave, see an Empress.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he might go for like a bit of Never Say Goodbye by Bon Jovi. Because he's never retiring. I keep seeing people say, "Oh, give him a new contract and put him on the coaching team." This fella's going to play for another 10 years. James Milner, I genuinely believe, is the type that if he still thinks he can offer something, he'd happily play in League Two. He'd be the type that wouldn't have any arrogance about, well, I'm not going to be a Premier League player anymore, I'm not going to play. I think Milner would get an incredible kick out of playing down the divisions.
Like John Walk did that, didn't he? John Walk carried on playing, I think.
Yeah, John Walk is a great shout for that. And like when you look at games played in that, Milner has, we're 20 odd years into the career. He's at 109 club appearances, and what did he make for England? 61. So he's at 809 and 61, 870 senior appearances. I think there'll be something in the back of his mind that will want to get to 1,000 games. And it's probably 3-4 more years for Milner. And would you put it past him to go and play a season, in the Championship next year, then maybe in League One? He might get a kick out of him, playing in every division. Play a bit of right back, the odd game in midfield, come off the bench, do his coaching badges maybe out of all the spotlight, away from Liverpool, and learn different things from different people. Because if he wants to be a manager, it might actually be beneficial to him to get to know those lower leagues a bit better as well. In his entire career, he's only played 6 games outside of the Premier League level, outside of the top flight, and those were with Swindon back in 03-04. So, maybe he goes there and does a year. Maybe he does a year at Leeds, a year at Swindon, and a year somewhere else, and that's just him. And he's happy out running around kicking lumps.
When he's gone through all the lower leagues here, he can go to Scotland and start in the top flight in Scotland.
That's Premier League and work this week. Then he comes across to Ireland, he could play League of Ireland at 45. But the great thing for Milner is that the rules are a little bit different in the Championship and in League One and League Two, and his own personal art form of volleying people up in the air, it would be more accepted in those divisions. Referees would question them.
Plus the fact the rules are different for James Milner anyway. Exactly. So you got to factor that in. Guy Drinkle reckons it's an S Club 7 tune for sure, and now I secretly want that to be the case too. We will wrap this up. It's been a pleasure as always. Thanks to Dave, thanks to Jim, thanks to Guy for producing. I've been Trev Downey, and we will speak to you again very, very soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.